Hello and welcome to the latest panel session of InfoSecurity Magazine. My name is Kevin Poirot. I'm a reporter at InfoSecurity Magazine, and I'm delighted to be your moderator for this session. So for the next 60 minutes, we are going to explore the benefits and maybe also the risks of using AI in a security operations center, possibly one of the most critical areas in cyber defense. As you can see, I have here with me three experts in cybersecurity who will bring different perspectives on how to best incorporate AI into SecOps. But before I introduce our speakers, please let me just have a moment to run a few bits of housekeeping. So first, I want to point that you can use the Q&A section to ask any questions to our speakers. So you can ask general questions about the topic, or you can maybe point a question to a specific speaker, and we'll make sure we answer all of the relevant questions by the end of the session. We will also be running some poll questions throughout the session, so please do join in with those. These are fully anonymous, and there are no right or wrong answers to those. We are just very interested to know what you think, and also it can inform the conversation we're gonna have. And finally, I want to say that all of our sessions, including this one, qualify our viewers for CPE credits. So please check the CPE instructions to know how to claim those. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our panel, starting maybe with you, Chas. Can you kick us off? Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, hey everybody, Chas Clausen. I'm the VP of Security Strategy at Sumo Logic. I've been here for, 7 years or so, and I guess my background has been a security practitioner for many years, too many to mention. A lot of my time comes from the government space, was on the NSA Red Team for a while as well, and we're doing exciting things in the world of AI and SecOps, so we're excited to chat with you guys today.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Over to you, Sean.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Mitchell. I'm founder of the School of SOC, which has only been going for about 3 months now, so we're still building that out. But it's a community designed to help people break into cybersecurity, especially as SOC analysts. But day to day, I'm head of cyber operations at a leading MSSP in the UK. So I've been doing that for the last 4 years or so. Previous to that, I was in the defense sector at Babcock, head of cybersecurity operations there. And before that, with a couple of consultancies doing SOC transformation, SOC immersion, SOC maturity assessment type work.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us. And finally, Dan.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. So Dan Jones, founder and CEO of 909 Cyber, a boutique consultancy based in San Jose, California. Prior to this, I had a real job. I used to run enterprise security for Adobe. Then I ran enterprise security at Cisco before becoming the CSO at some startups. And we got a lot of clients interested in this topic. So we spend a lot of time talking about, how can they use a SOC wisely? And then secondly, how do they turn on some superpowers with some AI? So yeah, loving this conversation.
Great, and thank you so much for joining us, and thank you all three of you for joining us. And we will have a conversation in a bit, but before we start this conversation, I wanted to hand it over to Chas for a quick presentation. I'll launch the slides for you, and then you'll be you on stage.
Awesome.
Let me just. Yes. No, that's not this one. Wrong one. There you go.
Awesome. So the title, this will be a short presentation to get our conversation going, and I'm really excited to have the panelists here to discuss this. The title of this slide is a little bit maybe controversial. And it's really more to be thought-provoking, right? Because we are now living in the world of agentic security. And Sean, to your point, we need to be encouraging, up-and-coming cybersecurity professionals to enter the field. And so hopefully this doesn't scare them away. I think the ultimate message that we're saying is we're all as humans going to be leveled up once we have AI into our SOC and our processes. Not that we're going to be abstracting away the role of humans, because I think that we're very far from that. We're going to talk about some specifics on where we are in the trend, right? So like in security operations, it's interesting because we're living through a huge shift across the entire technology space. And largely, of course, we're all tracking closely the advent of these frontier models that are just extremely intelligent. Well, the return on value that these tools are providing, I think, is not even in question anymore. As I meet with customers, I always tell them, like, hey, stop fighting this AI adoption wave, because you will come across as those that were fighting, the personal computer or the advent of the internet and cloud, etc. It is coming whether you like it or not. So what does that mean for us? It really means we just have to learn how to harness this technology, ride the wave instead of get swallowed by it. Now, what's interesting as for us here on this call, we're all security professionals. It's, one thing that I always remind people is large language models are extremely good at taking human readable text and turning it into intelligence. Well, what happens to be the primary format or vehicle for bringing in security telemetry? Well, it's log data. It's human readable text. And so what that means is AI agents are positioned very well to be a differentiator in our security operations program. Even still, with all of that, what we're seeing is a lot of these early projects will fail at the pilot or the demo stage, and they don't make it all the way into production. I would say don't let that slow you down. Just take the lessons learned and try again. Most of the time, the reason that these projects are failing is not the AI itself. It's because we're failing to rework like our processes and our workflows around AI. And so I think that'll be a better way to do it. Now, where are we in this curve? It's a wild ride. I mean, this should really be almost like straight up, but it's kind of gradual in this depiction. But this is, over the last few years, this is where we are. We started with just assistive AI, which is like, hey, I'm going to ask it a question and it's going to tell me, hey, what's the best restaurant, or how do I write a query, or whatever. Great. And that's most security teams that I talk to are still living in that world. They'll have ChatGPT open on the side or their favorite frontier model of choice, and they'll kind of go back and forth, just like helping, what does this attack pattern mean? Can you help me craft this query? Here's a log. Is there anything interesting there? That's cool. That's great. But where we need to be moving into this world of operational AI, where it can actually take the context, run an initial triage investigation, tell you its hypothesis. And at Sumo Logic, we have what's called the Dojo AI, and that's kind of where we're focusing a lot of our development, where we recently released a SOC analyst agent, and it does full soups to nuts investigation. You sit down and you just type, help me investigate this, enter, and it just rips, right? You go get your coffee, come back, and we're not the only ones doing this, of course. Like, this is happening across a lot of the bleeding edge tools. Where we want to get as quickly as we can safely is the world where it actually recommends action. And don't freak out, don't fall out of your chair, but ultimately maybe even taking action without involving the human. Now that will be case dependent, of course. So are there dangers to this? Obviously there are. It starts to go from blue to red, and why is that? Primarily because the more we shift towards an autonomous AI, the higher the risk becomes. And what do I mean by that? Really, it's about, hey, you're turning over the keys to the kingdom to an intelligent system that you necessarily don't even understand how it works. And so that you have to weigh that approach with where we are in the state of art of AI and all of these things. But at the same time, the reward there is there. And as I always say, the juice is worth the squeeze. So don't let those kind of fears slow you down, but just be responsible, right? And wrap controls and observability around any tools that you're doing. Follow best practice as you would always do as you're releasing new tools. Now, what does that mean in practice when you start to build these tools into your processes? Well, it's shifting from a human-centric workflow to a machine-centric workflow. As I said, they'll be working for you 24/7. They don't complain. There's no alert fatigue or you know, swivel chair syndrome and all of those words that we used to describe analyst burnout of yesteryears. Those are gone, and now we're just kind of the overseers. And Sean, to your point, when you go through a program like the School of the SOC, or you're a cybersecurity, you know, intern, or you're coming into the field, that just means you have a lot more tools at your disposal, and you're actually learning initially from the machine as it's doing the investigation. Now, when we get to autonomous response, I think that's when we really hit the road and things are going to get very, very exciting. Humans will just be there to handle the exceptions. Excuse me, human, I haven't seen this attack pattern before, or this looks like a critical system. Before I do anything, you might want to review what I'm planning on doing. You know, that kind of Jetsons world where I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I just heard someone discuss it. George Jetson, for those of you old enough to even know what that is, he would complain about his finger getting you know, sore, because all he did all day was push a button, accept, yes, yes, yes. And that was the human's role, because the intelligent robots were so good at doing the thing. He was just that human in the loop. That's where we're going to be, right? Where we're passed up or escalating only the very interesting cases to humans when the AI is not quite sure. Again, we're leaning in here a little bit, but you know, the reality is the day that you watch this presentation is the day that it becomes out of date. And that's the rate at which we're accelerating. We've never seen anything like this before, where you know, the frontier models are releasing new capabilities, and vendors and solutions are building on top of those new capabilities to the point where you can't even really keep track. Now, back to Dojo AI, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that, just to kind of unpack like how we're approaching this problem space. For us, we call it Dojo AI, and I love the name because what is a dojo? It's where you like get everybody together and you hone your skill, you hone your craft, you train up. Um, and so that's what we're building, this framework of AI agents, or army of agents that are purpose built or fit for purpose, designed to do things for very specific use cases. For example, I already talked about the SOC analyst agent, which does like a full investigation. We also have a query agent that will just help you write queries, so you don't have to be necessarily a SQL ninja, right? Like with all of these operators in your head, like, oh, now I need to do this, you know, and it's just, hey, I need to show me all the failed logons for Bob over the last 24 hours on a map for, you know, CloudTrail or Windows. Enter, there's your query, right? That's what the query agent is very good at doing. We have other agents called the knowledge agent, which help you read through all of the Sumo documentation. Hey, how do I create an alert for this, or create a dashboard or a report? Oh, let me walk you through step by step. So within this Dojo AI, we expect this to continually grow. And this goes for like any tool. Like we have the explosion of MCP, where agents are now communicating with other agents through that model context protocol. And now one agent can ask another agent, hey, do this thing for me. Oh, here it is, right? So it's really exciting. It's super exciting. What do you need to look for as you're evaluating tools? Couple things. First, make sure that your tool maintains context. The initial like push into the space was I could ask it a question and then that's it. Now, as you probably are experiencing with ChatGPT or others, it's conversational in the sense it remembers what you asked 10 minutes ago. And so if you're in the midst of an investigation, you could be like, yeah, but what about this? Or that IP that you mentioned earlier, like having it retain context makes all the difference. Being able to reason over evidence is huge. Multi-source correlation, of course, is a given. And then ultimately, like, can it provide you step-by-step guidance is huge. So I'm gonna not talk so much because I wanted to get the panelists in here to share some of their thoughts and expertise. But ultimately, like, this is kind of what we're building and what others are building. At the very top, you see the humans, and they're interfacing with all of these systems through an AI experience. Oftentimes it's chat, not always. Sometimes, you know, chat ops where it maybe the AI is sending you a Slack message or SMS or whatever. But that's kind of the wrapper. And then on the left side, you see all of these external agents, external tools, integrations, API calls, MCP, etc. And so now we have this kind of, we're creating this mesh, this global mesh where AI agents are becoming the fabric, right? Tool to tool, query to query, action to action is all happening programmatically, driven by, you know, AI agents, but ultimately by humans that are kind of directing the orchestra, right? So it's very cool to see. This will be the last slide that I show, I think. Well, I'll show one screenshot and then we'll go to the discussion. But you know, there's a couple things that you can do as you're trying to go down this path. Make sure that you're building on a good foundation of data. Clean the data as much as possible. Like the way that I frame it is garbage in, hallucinations out, right? Because if you're feeding data to AI that's ugly, it's going to struggle. It's going to fall down. So normalize the data. Don't overlook like classical detections. Like you still need SIMs. You still need EDR pumping out these very good signals close to the source. Those become the input to AI. AI is not doing real-time detections. It is more correlating across those detections. So don't over-rotate and think AI is going to solve everything and it's going to just find the bad stuff. No, we're building on top of technology that we've had for decades, right? This is, let's see, actually no, I'm gonna pause there because I think that sets a good stage on what we've seen in the field, and you know, we'll open this up to questions as well. So back to you, Kevin. And I can.
Thank you so much, Chas. Yes, I'm just gonna disable the slides for now anyway. And before we move on, I wanted to kind of take everyone out for a dance. So you've dived quite deep into how can we use AI for security operations. For people who are interested in Dojo AI, you can find out more in the handouts that we have. So there's a link to Dojo AI. But I want to kind of like take two steps back and maybe one step forwards. The 2 steps back first is, let's say we're not going to consider AI for just a little bit. I want to ask our audience members first, before the AI era, what was or what is now the biggest challenge that their SOC teams face today? So this will be the first poll question that we run today. I'm gonna launch it now, and we'll see in a few minutes what we get, what kind of answers we get, and it might also be useful for us to know how to help them as much as we can with some of the issues that they're facing. And then one step forward. So we are gonna obviously talk about AI today. But before we can talk about what AI can be used for in SecOps, I would like a sort of a reality check. I would like to start with a reality check. So we just heard about how AI could transform SecOps, but what's one way AI in security is over-promising right now? And what's one way it might be under-delivering today? And this question is for all of you. So whoever wants to take it first, be my guest.
I think in terms of over-promising, I think a lot of vendors are overstating the instant value that it's going to provide. And Chaz touched on this a number of times with a number of things, but in particular is you can't just plug in AI and it works, right? You have to have the data in the right formats. You have to have clean data. You have to have really solid processes, well defined beforehand. You have to give the agents access to business systems, procedures, etc. And if you don't have those in place, then you're just not going to get the type of value that you can really get out of it. So
I think the term AI slop is appropriately being used a lot, which means people just slapping AI on top of things, hoping for good outcomes. Really, they're just achieving that buzzword of, hey, this is AI enabled or AI native. So I think that, yeah, I totally agree with Sean. Right now, there's going to be a lot of growing pains. The dust will settle, and I think what will rise is those use cases that are actually solved by AI very, very well, and we just have to ride through that curve, I think.
Yeah, I
What
mean,
about you, Dan?
yeah, well, we're quite lucky because we sit in the middle, right? So we're a consultancy where we resell people's stuff, and we are CISOs and CIOs for companies where we're trying to fix problems. And the one thing that I kind of think people miss all the time is you don't need to tell them about AI, tell them about the problem you're solving. So in this case, what we're really talking about is efficiency within a SOC, accelerating the SOC, reducing the costs of your business that you'd normally spend on more SOC analysts and things of that nature, or maybe even solving a bit of an HR problem because SOC burnout is a huge thing. So I look at it like we are solving a problem which has been in our industry for years, and we just so happen to be leveraging this new piece of technology in order to do so. And I think too many people talk about AI like it's a magic buzzword and a magic wand. And I don't know if people have really realized the ROI on the magic wand yet.
Yeah, because I think there's a hidden costs, aren't there? Right? It's the engineering behind it and all the work that needs to go into setting the foundations for AI to be actually giving you the ROI. So
yeah. And Chaz, I mean, the whole slop in, right? The slop in, slop out is that's not changed.
Right.
I mean, I think I've been doing this nonsense since the early '90s, and then one of the things I learned early on was garbage in, garbage out, and that remains true today. And if your processes are garbage, if your data is garbage, all you're now going to do is accelerate garbage and confuse the AI machine.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point. And to be honest, like when we talk with customers and they're like, I heard about AI and now I have an initiative from the top to do AI stuff, sometimes you have to say, well, slow down just a little bit. Walk me through what your existing processes are and your playbooks or run books or SOPs, because ultimately you're trying to have systems automatically do what humans should be doing. And if the humans have been doing it wrong the entire time, how do you come over top and just expect it to fix things? So you still have to have your house in order, I think, to really accelerate through this AI curve.
Yeah, and I agree with Dan. Like, you're only going to exacerbate existing problems if you just try and put AI on top of a bad foundation. So
yeah, and I always love it. Yeah, I always love it when the executives read the Who Gives a Crap monthly magazine, and then they come out with these nebulous statements. So years ago it'd be like, let's do digital transformation. Well, and now it's like, let's do some zero trust. Now it's let's do some AI. And the reality is you got to, and I like the word pause, Chaz. I'm like, no, you got to stop, put the brakes on that one, and then really peel it back with the executives. What is your vision or view of what you mean by that? And I think when you start there, it's an easier, well, sometimes a harder conversation, but you have to have it.
Yeah, there's a meme going on with, like, I think it's a bunch of CEOs that are like a crowd, and they say we want AI, and someone asks why do we want it, and they respond we don't know.
yeah, exactly. Well,
but
there's a lot of hype, right? There's a lot of hype.
What do you? Is there any specific use case that you've seen your clients or customers that incorporate into their security operations, incorporate AI, where it was very useful, because I know that Chas introduced some use cases, some potential, obviously using chatbots, things like that. But could you share a specific use case where you thought, oh, that's pretty clever, or that's useful?
Well, I mean, I think the SOC use case is the easiest one for people to understand and see, because the amount of data you're dealing with that comes into the system then is overwhelming for the analysts, and we're missing stuff. So I look at that as being the easy, low-hanging fruit, and I just look at it like, can we use it to help get rid of false positives or reduce false positives? Can we help it to have you know, like some of the really common, because there's some really common triaging that happens there. So can we use it for that? Other words, most of the thing around AI I see right now is companies, most of the companies we partner with, they want to use AI. They basically want to use it to accelerate their business in general. So they'll want it for the marketing department, they'll want it for other departments, and they're just more concerned about how they secure it. Like, what does least privilege look like in the world of AI when we as an industry didn't really solve least privilege to begin with? I mean, we talk about it, but we still keep adding people to groups and we never take people out of groups. So I don't know if we've quite solved that problem yet either. But then there's a great use for AI. Why couldn't I use AI to look really at my environments, understand where the data all resides and what groups have been applied and associated, and then what people are in there and then who's accessing what? Like that analysis work is something that I think if you give the right access, then you could have AI easily jump on top of that use case.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, operationally, we talk about it a lot, but from this more strategic perspective, at a higher level in terms of baselining, like Den just said, and actually trying to figure out ways of identifying and fixing bottlenecks, not just in security, but the wider business is a use case I don't think is spoken about enough. But what I've seen it depends on your maturity. Very mature SOCs will use AI very differently to very immature SOCs. And I think what immature SOCs, which is probably the majority of SOCs out there, depending on what scale you use, but they can really use it. And I see a lot of SOCs using it for documentation, process development, reporting, comms, summarization, things like that. Actually using it to help accelerate maturity of the SOC instead of actually day-to-day operational stuff. So.
Yeah, the poll, I was just going to say, that aligns exactly what they just said, because if you look at this, like, right out of the gate, alert fatigue, which, what we led with, that's been the problem plaguing SOCs forever. And AI actually can do very well chunking through massive amounts of data. And then the next thing that Sean mentioned, which is, how do we help our SOC teams or SecOps processes level up on that maturity curve? Well, guess what? You have a super genius that happens to know every framework out there, it knows what best practices you should be using, and you can interrogate it and use it to train up your analysts or to create programs. And so I think as we looked to ways to kind of apply AI into the overall programs that we're running, we can get very creative, and ultimately what I hope will happen is it'll start that flywheel where you mature your SOC with AI, and then your SOC starts to use more AI and it becomes more mature, and then it starts to really accelerate. Ultimately, where this ends, no one really knows, like how much can you automate or do through these new intelligent systems. But that's beside the point, because the value that we're trying to drive, which is improve the security posture, reduce the risk of the business, is only going to improve as we leverage these tools. So it's going to be an exciting ride for sure.
And just so I pulled out these the results we got from the first poll. So it looks like half of our respondents said alert fatigue and false positives was the biggest or one of the biggest challenges they faced. Based on this, Sean, when you talk to people, when you train people to like like some of the skills that they need to know about working in a SOC, what do you tell them around AI? What should they, if they want to implement, like for example, a SOC that wants to implement an AI workflow? I'm not talking about like should you use Claude instead of ChatGPT, but should they use general purpose models? Should they fine tune it? How should they use it in a sandbox environment? Like, what would be like a use case? Say if your number one issue is alert fatigue and false positives, what kind of use case could be valuable to you?
I don't. Again, talking about maturity, it depends on the maturity of the SOC, but I wouldn't automatically just prescribe AI to solve that problem, because there are probably other fundamental issues that are in the way that are preventing or causing it. Foundational stuff, your data might not be good, your tools might be disparate and not talking to each other, you might have your automation might not be there, your processes, your procedures, all that stuff just might be feeding into this. So AI is not necessarily going to come in and to solve that. But in terms of if they're leveraging AI and they're going to do it, I wouldn't even say pick a particular model or particular, use a sandbox. Obviously, going to have good hygiene and governance around how you use AI and which AI you're using and where it sits. But what I would say to SOC analysts is get very good at validation, being aware of the limitations of the AI. And a lot of analysts these days, especially early in their careers, are very tool driven, even without the AI. So when you've got tools telling you, here's a critical alert, but actually it's not, it's probably a low to medium, or it's a false positive. A lot of SOC analysts are just going with what the tool is saying. And I think that the danger with AI is that it's going to exacerbate that, and they're going to trust AI implicitly that the AI is giving them the right answer. So I think more than ever, the fundamentals are going to be more important, as important as ever. So them understanding what the AI is telling them and being able to validate is probably the biggest skill, I'd say.
And beyond, obviously, I guess to get this kind of skills, you have to have experience. Experience is everything. But beyond the experience they can get, is there any resources? Is there anywhere they should go to? Any frameworks or any things that they should know about? You'd think?
There's a lot out there. I mean, to really get the fundamentals of becoming a SOC analyst, there's a lot of IT, operating systems, networking, attack tactics, techniques, procedures, things like that. There's a lot that they need to cover. So it's very hard to point them into one place to go and be ready, should I say. So yeah, I can't really answer that question very well without steering people down the wrong path, I think.
One thing that I would say is I teach on the side for University of Maryland Global College, but cyber courses, and AI is almost going to displace like the formal structured university format, because lately I've been, and if you're not aware of this, everybody should check it out, but Google released Notebook LM, where you can give it a topic, like give me fundamentals of being a cybersecurity analyst, and it will create a 1-hour podcast between two fictitious people talking about that podcast or that topic in a way that's digestible. Now imagine being able to do that on every single topic, and you watch one of those every single day. Using AI as your personal professor is going to train you up as good as almost any college course. And Notebook LM is just one example that I'm using on a weekly basis, but there's plenty of others out there like that. So to Sean's point, like there's so much out there. Just pick one and see how far it can take you.
The only caveat I'd give to that is currently in its current iteration, I'm sure it'll only get better and better over time. As you said, after this conversation, this whole conversation will be out of date, but it's not deterministic AI. So you ask it, you give it one prompt, 1 minute, it'll give you an answer. You give it the same prompt, another minute, it'll give you a different answer. So
what mood it is in.
Yeah. So I'd say be careful using it as a learning tool, because it can be very confidently wrong about stuff that it tells you. So if you're taking that at face value, it goes back to what I said just before, having that critical validation, critical context awareness, and being able to tell whether or not the AI is giving you good information or not. It's really hard to do in the early stages of your career. So, but I'm almost certainly we'll get to the point where we can trust it to be that good. I just don't think it's there now.
And I think that's across the AI board, right? I mean, it doesn't right now. It's not in a position to really replace a lot of the traditional methods. I think it's in a position to give us confident answers, like my teenage kid. It's like confident is crap, but quite clearly wrong. And so I think it still means that as we're going for the next couple of years, the ability for us to fact check, double check, make sure that we're validating in some senses. And I saw something brilliant last week, which was AI being used to fact check or validate the other AI agents. And I can't remember the context that it was in, but it was another security setting. But the reality is it's like, wow, yeah, that's brilliant actually, because if I'm going to do it's checking codes for security vulnerabilities. And it's like, well, if I can get AI to double check that other AI agents work, and that's its only goal, I was like, that's pretty clever.
Yeah.
And then, John, to your point, the same prompt in two different instances of the same agent, or the same LLM, or within different ones. If I go to 3 different ones, I'm probably going to get absolutely 3 unique answers.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
wanted
there's
to.
a term for that. I think
Yeah, go ahead.
mixture of experts or something like that, where you're layering AI even across models. Like, hey, ChatGPT told me this. What does Gemini say? And Grok, can you be a critical judge to that? Like, by the time you work through all of them and you're explicitly saying, can you make sure this is accurate? If you start with that premise in your prompt, it will actually find holes in the argument upstream. So using that approach is a really great piece of advice.
But isn't it going to be quite resource intensive on the organization side to use several AIs to do these jobs, and like also resource in terms of like maybe compute power, maybe also resource in terms of money, because some of these models are not cheap. So I mean, like if you're a Fortune 500 company, maybe your SOC will have the money for this. But if you're a SME, will you really be able to deploy such complex systems?
Yeah, I'd say that's the age-old challenge of our industry anyway, which is the more money you have, the better job you can do. The less money you have, the higher your risk, I guess.
Optimistically, I would say that, tracking the cost per token, or, as we're using these tools to input text and output text where they're charging you money, is dropping off a cliff. So conversationally, I'm not seeing that being like a point of resistance or friction. When you start using LLMs to actually generate code and purpose-built applications, which I've gone into customers and they've literally said, I had this problem, I couldn't do this thing, and I vibe coded this solution, that will burn a ton of credits. But if you're just saying, can you validate this security operations procedure or manual or workflow? You could do that all day long across all the LLMs and probably not really make a dent, because it's not too heavy from what I've seen.
But as more mature outfits and well-resourced companies are developing their own internal solutions, you're going to see the gap, I think, between the mature and the immature just increase exponentially.
Right.
I just wanted to launch our second poll question, which I'm also probably going to ask you guys. I'm going to ask you the same question. Which AI capability would have the biggest impact on your SOC? So I'm going to read out the answers for this one. And obviously, these are just some options, but you can specify in the Q&A if you have any other ideas. So the first one is automated threat detection. Second one is faster incident response, so reduced MTTR, mean time to what is it? MTTR, mean time to
or recover.
Respond. Yes, that's it. Yeah. Predictive analytics for proactive defense, natural language processing for log analysis, or other. So you can specify using the Q&A section. So I'm going to start the poll, and again, we're going to check back in a few minutes. What would you say? What would you guys, you three, with your expertise, what would you say is the most, or is the AI capability we will see emerge in security operations in the near future?
I can start there just because I come from a vendor viewpoint. Training up a new analyst on like a SIEM, like Sumo Logic or Splunk or Elastic or any of them, there is a learning curve, because like day one you have to understand how to write a query. That one was the first thing that Sumo used AI to solve, where you could now just ask it natural questions, which I already talked about. But being able to just sit down and just say, hey, show me all the interesting things that Mary did over the last 24 hours, and is there anything, whatever, and it writes a query for you. That's awesome. I mean, that is quite amazing when you think about it. And then as an analyst, I would hope that you don't just blindly trust it and be, oh, okay, moving on, but you actually look at the query that it wrote, understand it, and then be able to like eventually write it on your own, or even just help steer it. Like, actually, you're grouping by the wrong thing, or you shouldn't be writing, like if you're completely oblivious to what the query is doing, then you're probably not going to be doing a good job. But that was like, honestly, just being able to write queries on our behalf is huge. And then moving into helping stitch together the context of an event, to me, is huge. That was where, when I was a SOC analyst, it was like, okay, let me figure out, I got to look through a week's worth of data and cherry pick out what's interesting, put it on a timeline. AI can burn through that. Like, here's what I'm seeing that looks suspicious. He logged in from this country, and then he logged in from that country, and then he sent a large amount of data, and then this binary was installed. Like, I could have found that after hours. Now it's like, here it is. Does this look right? And you're like, oh wow. So those are the two areas that I'm really seeing.
Yeah, I think with the right access, if it's set up in the right way with the right data, the right context, everything is an ideal situation for the AI to operate within. I think it's really just the limits are our imagination. It's really hard to say what's really going to become the next big thing. But what I think will be massive is sort of automated threat hunting in the background. 24/7 threat hunting. You're not necessarily generating alerts, but just plugging away, constantly baselining, rebaselining, looking at the threats that are relevant to the organization, because obviously that would be documented neatly somewhere and accessible to the AI, and then just constantly doing that in the background, and then surfacing things every now and then for the human in the loop to come, dig in a little bit deeper. But I think that will be absolutely massive.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to the imagination of the problems we need to solve. Because if I think of MTTR and I'm like, are we talking response or recovery? Because for me, it's like, I think we'll be able to do both faster. And so when I look at these things, I think the opportunity is for us to do all of these things a little bit better than we did before. And again, now it just comes into, depending on the maturity of your organization and your existing tooling, your existing processes, then you will have a different opportunity to save money and move faster in a different area. So I think it really does depend specifically on the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's, for me, what's exciting about this, because when we're out there talking with people, peers, clients, whatever, the cool thing is you can ask that same question to every single one of them, and you'll get, generally speaking, a broad spectrum of answers.
Chas, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's exactly right. Ultimately, I think as security professionals, we do need to remember, like, what is our value to an organization, and what is the outcome, as Den mentioned. Like, that's really, as cool as these tools are, we need to make sure, like, are we actually spending our dollars wisely, and are we making the business more secure? The challenging thing, I think, will be, the tech space is changing, which means the attack surface is changing, which means, like, the attackers are doing different techniques and tactics against us. So we have to be very agile and nimble and kind of roll with the punches. But yeah, just remember, like, security is a supportive function of the business.
And to enable all that stuff, as the attackers evolve, we're going to have to really standardize even more so all the ways we operate and integrate intelligence and our tooling and everything. It's going to become so much more obvious how important that is to be able to sort of jump in and continue to mature in that world. So
yeah. And if you listen to a lot of the sales pitches from security vendors, they always tell you how they're going to reduce your risk. And my answer to most of them is, can you stop telling me that? Because you all say it. Maybe you start with telling me how you're going to help me reduce costs, help me reduce friction within the business so the business can move faster. And then finally, like everybody else says, reduce risk. But every CISO we speak with, and even myself and running these organizations, you're always under pressure to save money. You're really, or I'll save money from this initiative so I can move it over to this strategic initiative. So you're always looking for ways where you can shave the money from the operational costs. And that's what I think this has the best value. So another lens to look at this is not about which one of these would I think I'll start with or go to. It's a case of which one is costing me the most and which one would AI help me reduce the cost of if we implemented it right.
Mhm.
And I think I go back to maybe Sean, what you said earlier, which is really if you've not got all the right things in place, then this thing's just going to accelerate your garbage.
And without sharing your secret sauce, but how do you help them decide which vendor to choose, which ones, not necessarily which ones are good, which ones are bad, but which ones are made for them and which ones they could maybe do without, at least for the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go to the old school thing. I grew up in a time where Novell was being replaced by Windows quite a lot across the whole planet, right? And then I'd meet these people and they'd just tell me how they're Windows admins. And every solution, it didn't matter what the problem was, the solution they're picking is Windows. So you get people that pretty much their like blinders are up and they've got their religious bias on their technology platform play or whatever.
Mhm.
I look at this and I say, look, the first thing I've got to look at is a technology that can integrate with what the clients already have. Because there's nothing worse than me going in there and saying, oh, we're going to rip out 3 other products and change all your processes. And that's very disruptive. So it's integrate with what we've got today. It's the same old look at your features and your problem statements and the things that you're trying to solve as a requirement. And now we're starting to overlay which vendor can help. I also am a big fan of playing around with startups. I mean, I found my time at Adobe, we'd hang out with a lot of seed round or A round startups because we'd get a better deal. And sometimes they were doing the more fun stuff anyway, right? So I think that's the thing. And actually, Chaz at Sumo, I knew the Sumo guys before Splunk was even a thing, right? So for me, it's like getting to meet these young companies that are really breaking new ground is or forward thinking is great. So Kevin, so I mean, I guess the short there's not a short answer. It really comes down to, for me, integration with existing tooling and processes. Do you meet the features and the functions? Is your pricing good? And then the biggest one is, can I deploy this quickly? So my ROI on getting from signing that purchase order to having the thing installed and returning value on that investment, I want to measure it in 3 months or 6 months. If it's more than 6 months for me to get value out of this thing, then I'm probably going to be more hesitant. And the cost of operation is going to be so low that I'm not spending more money to babysit this new tool that we brought in.
So we got a great question from an audience member. Usually I leave them for the end of the session, but I can feel that this one will need some focusing on. What are the easiest ways to start using AI in the SOC without changing everything? Who wants to take that one? Gather your thoughts.
I mean, if you're like completely new to the world of AI, I would say stand up like an internal AI initiative out of the gate so that you're not setting yourself up for, shadow AI problems. So pick a tool that you can sanction and say, okay, guys, we're going to get a business license for Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever. Start there. I mean, that's easy to do. Like we see customers setting up like Open Web UI or Light LLM, which is kind of like a gateway into different models. And a lot of these tools, don't be intimidated. They're not as hard to set up as you might think. But then you're basically saying, we encourage AI within our organization. We're not wanting you to do it secretly, like my kids are with their homework and not telling their teachers, like, hey, expose it and like make it, approved, but at least wrap some sort of governance around it. And that's once they start interfacing with AI and they see the power of it, I think then you take it to the next step, which is, okay, now what maybe AI is coming in through the vendors, like they're implementing it. Maybe not. Maybe we need to build something bespoke, but you have to start like, having it be like, as far as I'm concerned, like an officially blessed initiative out of the gate.
Yeah, I'd say the lowest hanging fruit, as long as it's governed properly and the corporate policy allows for it, and it's not shadow AI or anything. But the lowest hanging fruit is the Claudes, the Chat GPTs, stuff like that. If you really have no other maturities in the place where you can leverage it by integrating it with tools, just use it for documentation, summarizing reports, generating incident summaries, creating playbooks, things like that. I think that's the obvious low-hanging fruit that you can leverage it for.
Yeah, and at some point you've got to give access to your data. So if you really want it to start going through your the logs and all that stuff, I mean, so if you're going to integrate it with Splunk or something of that nature, or Sumo or whatever, right? Give it the access. But I think you've got to be really thoughtful about what data it's got access to. I mean, just from a data security perspective. And then for us, we look at it like, can we just get this thing ingesting, and then in the background query it, and then cross-reference it with known information that we trust that the analysts already, that the analysts have already validated. So now you're maybe using it to do look backs before you start thinking, I'm going to use it to predict or look forward, right?
I'll add as well, like obviously ChatGPT, using that just for general support and answering questions and helping build stuff out. If you're a little bit more engineering focused, you have some developers or security engineers that can do this sort of stuff. Building out sort of very basic, N8N is a good example, right? It's open source. It's something you can install locally. You can build out your own little agents and explore in a sandbox and do some R&D and see how you can leverage it, and start surfacing the ones into production that actually start providing some sort of value. That's another way I think you can get going.
I love the N8N example because it is a full playbook. You can automate pretty much anything, but what people may not realize is you can use AI to generate because it's all JSON files. I would like an email to come in, and I want you to read the email and pass it through this agent, and then determine who should get notified. Have AI help you build the automation, and then all of a sudden you got you paid for itself, which I mean N8N is free anyway, but still it's worth the effort to stand up those kind of tools for sure to play around.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. But yeah, thank you. That was great. Some great insights and tips for our viewers today. So I can see that there's only 6 minutes left for us. So I wanted to first have a quick check at the poll question that I launched earlier. So I can see that I can see that automated threat detection is leading, but no, actually, I didn't see that. But predictive analytics for proactive defense is now leading. So it's kind of like half between automated threat detection and predictive analysis for proactive defense. So this seems to be the two areas where our audience members are looking into using AI. Is that something that you were expecting? Is that surprising to you guys?
I'm surprised that the instant response being faster thing wasn't. I mean, that for me, I'd at least expect that to get a quarter of the results, because the ability to get the red light going quick, the ability to triage it quick and respond quick, I think for me that's so a little surprised it didn't even get a vote.
Yeah, I agree. I think some of them are dependent on the other in there, but that's I would have expected something there. But I wouldn't have expected predictive analytics to be on the top, because it's quite an advanced topic for any SOC, really.
Unless our audience is very advanced this morning.
Yeah, maybe they are. I didn't want to leave you before touching on the skills as well. The skills, like the impact that AI will have on the people who are making up our SOC, our Security Operations Center. Sean, how do you think? Because basically, I'm also working on something around vibe coding and the impact of AI-assisted platforms to software developers. And one debate that a lot of people are putting on the table is that it might, because of AI, the lowest skilled people will no longer be needed or not be needed as much as before, which poses a different questions and different issues, obviously, because then how do you get to a higher level of skills if you can't go through, learn the ropes, basically? And also like the issue of taking out some of our jobs. How do you think AI will impact security operations? Do you think we'll need less humans in the future? Yes or no? And maybe it's more complicated than that. And especially, what do you think people who want to get into security operations what skills are going to be more important or most important in the future?
So I think from a resource perspective, it'll almost certainly have an impact on the number of people we have, but I think it's shifting the problem to more of an engineering problem. Not entirely, but just more that way, right? Because you're going to have good data. You're going to have your own, AI pipelines, automation pipelines to leverage all this stuff, interconnect them into your business logic. You're going to have AI not just working in SOC. It's going to be working across your entire organization, and all those agents are going to talk to each other. So I think it's going to be a lot of the resources going to shift to an engineering issue to resolve. But just to answer the question around skills for people, I think the fundamentals will still be the same, because you're going to have to, analysts are going to have to come in and still validate that the AI is doing the right sort of stuff, and or train the AI, or develop the context for the AI to work with, the procedures, the process, and stuff like that. So I think it'll just the bar will be leveled up in terms of what it will take to get into the entry level, but you'll still need people to come in and be able to monitor what the AI is doing and be the human in the loop. So the L1 triage will just look different. You'll still have L1 triage. It'll just look different to what it looks like now, I think.
I just saw a study, was it yesterday or the day before, where IBM said that they're looking to expand their like entry-level Gen Z hires, and that's in spite of like AI, taking over the world. And so I think, to Sean's point, we're going to accelerate. Maybe those new hires that IBM are bringing in are not necessarily, the frontline doers, but they're those that are tinkerers that can say, hey, can I use agents to solve different problems for the business? And they're already tech savvy, and they're probably already AI aware. So bring in all these younger thoughts. Maybe that's a good thing, because they're not like buried in the world of how you used to do things. Now it's just like the sky's the limit. AI can do a lot of cool stuff. Let's just unleash your creativity on these different problem spaces. So yeah, I would say it's more of a shift than a reduction.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. No, we're short on time. With every technology shift, every major technology shift, there becomes opportunities, and I think there's a lot of unknown right now. And I think it was mentioned earlier about we're limited more by our imagination and what we can dream up than we are anything else. So I think there's a huge opportunity ahead of us. And I think right now we just assume the worst. We always assume that, it's going to be negative and there'll be a lot of job losses. But I think the opposite might occur, where there's just going to be a lot of new ideas and new opportunities of things that we didn't imagine before.
Great. I think that's all the time we have for today. But thank you so much to Chas, to Sean, and to Dan for joining us. And thank you all our viewers for watching us talk and chiming in as well and asking the question. You will be able to see this webinar on demand as well. So if you've missed some part of it, you can catch up. And I just wanted to let everyone know that our next webinar will be on the 12th of March, and we will be looking into the intelligence edge, clarity, context, and the human advantage in modern CTI, so cyber threat intelligence. Thank you so much for joining. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.